So just as there you go, we're live.
Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone. Really excited to be joined by Terry Deary tonight. Do you want to start us off with an intro to you and your books?
I am the author of this book, Terry Deary's. Actually, I keep putting my fingers over the title. Actually, I Am a Murderer. And it came out on the 12th of June. And yesterday, I was delighted to see it went into Waterstone's top 10, which is great.
Oh, that's really good.
It really is good, yeah. And in the next column was my non-fiction, which was in at number 7. So it's a bit unusual to get non-fiction and fiction in the same week in 2 different lists. Wow.
And they're both really good books.
Well, thank you. I'm too modest to say that, of course.
I can say it for you though. Having read both, because
Right.
I met you in Waterstones and got a history of Britain in 10 Enemies.
I do remember.
And it was a really good read.
Good, thank you.
As is actually I'm a Murderer.
Right.
It's a bold, because this is your first crime book, right?
More or less. I mean, I've written for young adults and sort of teenagers and children, but this is my first full-length adult crime fiction, yeah.
Because it feels like it's quite a bold start, isn't it? I mean, you've kind of given it away in the title. We sort of open with a conversation with someone admitting they're a murderer, which is quite an interesting beginning for a crime novel.
I hope so. He later regrets saying that, but the story grows from there. And there is more than one murderer in the book. So it's a mystery in the sense that you don't know who commits the second murder. And does the third murder actually happen? I don't know, because I can't remember the ending. What a shame.
Yeah, we don't want to give spoilers away.
No,
Set in like early 1970s Sunderland.
it's set in 1973. The problem is for that one of them. There are 3 narrators. There's the murderer himself. Actually, narrates 1/3 of the chapters. A policewoman who's on the case narrates her side of the viewpoint, and the third is an actor called Tony Davis, and he meets the murderer on a train, and he finds he's been set up to become the murderer's victim. And because of the plotting, he manages to delay his own murder for 50 years. But you see the story from 50 years in his future, which is 2023, obviously. When the murderer comes for him, will he get him or not? You'll have to read the book to find out.
You will. Is the actor a little bit based on you?
The actor thinks he's God's gift to theatre, and he's misunderstood and underappreciated. He also thinks he's God's gift to women, so it couldn't possibly be me. It's a bit like, Constable. You've seen the picture, the Haywain. He was there. He had a landscape in which he set the boy with the cart, but Constable isn't the boy or the cart. But he has painted a landscape to put them in, and that's me. The landscape of the story is me, but Tony isn't necessarily me. He went through some of the similar experiences that I did, but it's only to give an authenticity to the story, rather than say, that is me, that is my story, and I would have done this if I'd been there.
Yeah, fair enough. I wondered, because he sort of started writing things for children and things like that, doesn't he? It's like alternative to acting.
No, it came from acting, because I joined a theatre company in the middle of Wales, a town called Brecon, and we would tell stories about the communities we were visiting around Breconshire. For example, in the town of Sennybridge, there was a valley ran down from Sennybridge called the Senny Valley. And developers wanted to flood the valley and create a new Welsh reservoir. And we had to tell the story of how the people stood up against the developers and won the battle not to have their valley drowned effectively. But you couldn't go to a shop or a library and pick off a shelf with their story. We had to take the story, the real life anecdotes from people, and put them into a play with music. And we had lots of sketches, as it were, but we had to then string them together. And it seemed that even though I wasn't officially a writer, I had the knack of putting these stories into some sort of semblance of order, giving them an overarching narrative, if you like, until eventually I almost graduated into becoming the writer for the company. I did this with every play we did. And then one June, the company said, right, when we come back in September, we're going to do a schools tour. Okay. Can you have written a children's play for September? Yeah. I said, what are you going to do? And they said, oh, we're going on holiday. Thanks, mate. So when we came back in September, I'd written a play about a cowardly cowboy called The Custard Kid. It was an interactive drama, what you call today immersive theatre, where the children were the characters. They witnessed the action. They became witnesses in the Custard Kid's trial. They were the jury to decide, was he guilty, not guilty, what should happen to him. It's called immersive theatre today. Then it was called theatre in education. And it was very successful, though I say it myself. But after 6 weeks, the costumes were packed away into a box. The Custard Kid was dead. He'd gone, which was a shame. I then picked up a book from a library a couple of years later and said, write about something you know. And one of the things I knew was the Custard Kid. If I turn my story, The Custard Kid, into a children's book, he'll live on, which is what I did. And I had 24 refusals before Custard Kid was finally accepted. And I was on the road to being a children's author. At the same time, I wanted to write for adults. So I took something that happened to me when I was working in Breconshire and turned it into a story called Actually I'm a Murderer. And what happened to me was, from Brecon, I drove down to Cardiff, jumped on the train, went across to London for a night out. But at the end of the night, I was taking the train back to Cardiff to get my car back to Brecon. And it was a very slow stopping train, picking up post, dropping off milk churns and whatever. And there were 4 of us in the compartment. And we began this sort of guessing game. So what do you think I do? What do you think I do? And I don't know why I said it, but I said, actually, I'm an actor. As if it's, wow, aren't you amazed? And when I got back and was looking for a theme for a murder story, I said, what about if somebody had said, actually, I'm a murderer? And the short story developed about 1974. And I couldn't sell it because by then I was into the routine of selling children's books, and I put it away and it gathered dust in my attic. But all I ever read are murder mysteries. So I thought, I've done 46, 7, 8 years of writing children's books. I want to write what I want to write now. I want to write a murder mystery. And I went to my short story, Actually, I'm a Murderer. And I read it and I thought, wow, that's good. The older I get, the better I used to be. And I blew off the dust. I've been remembering my attics to the houses I moved around for 50 years and developed it into a full-length book called Actually, I'm a Murderer. Did I mention that that's the title of the book? And because I never operated in the genre, I needed an agent. and I gave it to him with 3 sample chapters, the standard thing you do when you want to write a book. 3 chapters and a synopsis of how it worked. And he very quickly found me a publisher, which was amazing. Yeah. So there it is. It's taken a couple of years to come out because they wanted a big build-up for this summer as their book of the season, as it were. But finally, it is on the shelves, and I couldn't be happier with it.
Got lots of questions for you, but Laura, who's watching, has got one. She wants to know if you act out scenes to help with the writing process.
Do I act out what?
Do you act out scenes? You know, scenes from your book?
Being an actor, and because there are 3 characters who narrate it, I just become that character and tell the story. I sit in my word processor here, and when I'm the woman police officer, I become her and tell the story as if I'm her. When I'm the murderer, which I'm not, I hasten to add, right? But I can assume the character of, he's called John Brown, I can assume his character and become cold and ruthless and quite intelligent. And when I'm Tony, the actor, that's the hardest one of all because I'm not at all like Tony, this failed actor and failed womanizer. So yeah, I do use my acting skills. I don't actually act it out, but I very much write in scenes, as it were. I've always have, whether it's children's fiction or adult. I tend to create scenes in dialogue, so you can almost see them on the screen. Yeah.
I like the female police officer because she's starting out a career, isn't she, and kind of facing a lot of just kind of casual sexism along the way.
More than casual, it's institutional misogyny against female police officers who are kept in their place by the men who think that the police force is their territory, and these women are patronized at best and hit on at worst. And for this, I talked to women police officers from the 1970s. My wife's got one as a very good friend. And they did suffer also, not least was the uniform, where they wore skirts and tights, and they had to carry a handbag, a little handbag, which barely fitted their notebook, and in it was their truncheon, which was tiny and wouldn't stun a cat. And if they suggested they wanted to be part of CID, the detectives would mock them and say, she ID, ho, ho, ho. And it was very, very hard life. So my character of Aileen is not just ambitious, but she's also a very angry person, which explains a lot of her motivation. So a very angry woman police officer. Don't call them police women, by the way. They're women police officers.
And she does well for herself throughout the book, doesn't she? It doesn't start well for her, but by the end of the book, she's sort of made progress in her career. And
yeah, you've got to get to book 2 to find how she's made progress in her career, but she does because she's a very strong character. And I think it's important to get strong female characters in, and not just females as the victim all the time. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with Aileen. In fact, Mr. Brown's not bad. So, you know, I thought I was writing a serious murder mystery because this killer is going to come for Mr. Brown is going to come for Tony in 50 years' time. And so the tension is building up to that. I thought, wow, this is quite a horrific sort of scenario. And the first editor to read it said, yeah, lots of times I just laughed out loud. What? I didn't know it was funny. And I just have to acknowledge people find this book funny, but it's a very black humour. and they find Mr. Brown is particularly humorous, and he's the murderer, for goodness sake, you know. So it's a black comedy, if you like, as well as a mystery, and I hope a thriller as well.
That's quite a feature of your writing, though, isn't it? Because I felt like the history of Britain and Ten Enemies had quite, there were funny moments.
Oh, I know. Can I tell you? I wrote a history of Britain in 10 Enemies, and again, the first reaction from the editor was, I laughed out loud. And a friend of mine was interviewing me on stage for an audience. And before we went on, I said, people keep saying this is a funny book. And it's not meant to be. He said, look, page 96, you say about Lord Nelson. I wouldn't say Nelson was a small fella, but his family tree was a bonsai. He said, how can you say you don't put jokes in? Oh, all right. I do. Yeah. So, yes, I guess it's just part of my nature as a writer to put in humorous black, especially black comedy anecdotes. Sorry, but a lot of people like the humor.
No, I do. I think it works well in like the story in Actually I'm a Murderer. It kind of works having that kind of black humor in, because that's often how people in those services deal with things that are happening, isn't it? They do have that kind of sort of black comedy going.
I hope so. I mean, murder, you don't get much blacker than murder, unless it's the history books where it's even more grim because it actually happened. But murder mystery, yes. I think it's part of writing murder mysteries. They are escapism. I can become the murderer, but people know it's not real. There's also the puzzle element. Who done it? You know very quickly who done the first one, but who done the second one, and how you, I hope, don't see the third one coming. So yeah, it's escapism, and you can afford to be humorous because people think, now he's not really making fun of somebody being murdered because they weren't really murdered. It's just fiction.
Donna's asked, how difficult is it to be authentic? I think especially about things like the female police officers experience without crossing the line to being offensive.
I spoke to police officers from 1973. I went to the Sunderland Police Retired Officers Association, and I got lots of authentic details from them. And when I'd finished the book, I said, by the way, the Sunderland Police do not come out of this very well. And when their chairman read it, he said, no, the police don't come out of it very well, but it's a lovely story. And we do appreciate it is just fiction. So I'm trying to keep the general, what I call in landscape of the story authentic. And there, I'm afraid, were at that time, apart from the lovely police officers I interviewed, there were some rogue ones. And when I was in Sunderland back in 1970, early 1970s, I did experience one or two rogue officers. I'm not paranoid, but there was one that picked on me. And at this point, everybody goes, oh.
Oh.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. Was it hard? Did you write Sunderland at that time from your memory, or did you have to go back and do any research?
Both. Back in the last century, 1990s, I went to a bookshop in Windsor, and the bookshop manager went on before me and said, ladies and gentlemen, we have Terry Deary. This man is so old, he writes history from memory. Great, thanks, mate. Which got a laugh. And I was only, in my 50s then. What would he say now? And then when Actually I'm a Murderer went to the publishers, they said, oh, we like this. We could put it up for murder mystery prizes. And somebody in the office said, but hang on, this book is set over 50 years ago, so it will go in for history prizes in mystery. So it's a history book, right? And I wrote it largely from memory. So now I find I really do write history from memory. How cruel is that? I also made sure I did research, and I found things I'd forgotten. For example, part of my landscape, being Sunderland, included things I'd forgotten. The pits were still open then. So there had to be coal mines, and so were the shipyards. And there's a scene in the shipyards in the book, and I had forgotten that. So it was a mix of me remembering when I was in my mid-20s, being in Sunderland, and doing research just to check and finding I had forgotten a lot.
It's kind of, someone's put on here, does it hurt that technically writing about 1973 made your book historical fiction?
No, it's very hard to think that people these days consider the 1970s to be history. But I've been going around and I meet younger people, and I know some legendary people that I've met. Take, for example, the man who invented the Great North Run. He's called Brendan Foster, and he lives in Gateshead, and I've spent a lot of time with him. And if I say, yeah, Brendan Foster's a friend of mine, people say, younger people, who? Never heard of him. Oh. And I'm a runner, and one of the people that is sort of was my model was from near Sunderland. He's called Steve Cram. This is a world record holder for a mile, gold medalist in the Olympics. And so, oh yes, of course, my running is inspired by Steve Cram. And people say, who? And these people were legendary, 30 odd years ago. And now, and it's the same with pop music. It works both ways, I suppose. That I haven't heard of a lot of the contemporary pop singers. But you mentioned one of the ones that you liked when you were younger, and the young people today say, who? Never heard of them. So, yeah, I just got to accept 1970s are now history, and I lived through them.
I mean, as someone who was born in them, it's also slightly depressing that they're history.
Yes, I know. But you get used to it. A young lass like one day you look back and say, I remember 2025, and I chatted to this fella called Terry Deary, and people say, who? It's the way of the world.
I don't know, I feel like with horrible histories as well, haven't you created a legacy that's going to live on? Like, there's such a love for like the things you've created. Like, people genuinely have a love of history from you
Yes,
creating.
I get a lot of people, endless people, come to me and say, I'm doing history at university because of your books. And I say, don't blame me, mate. Yes, that was never my intention. My intention was not to look at history, but to look at people and human behavior. Why do people behave the way they do? And an answer to that comes from how did people behave in the past? And they're models for us, but they tended to become history books. And so I've got to live with it. That even though I think I'm writing horrible histories as books about people, they're also perceived as books about history.
Does that set you up to write things like Actually I'm a Murderer, though? Because your interest is in people and behaviour.
Oh,
So that'll help you.
no, it's my drama training because I was an actor. My drama tutor said, the purpose of drama is to answer one question and one question only. Why do people behave the way they do? And that's what I looked at when I was writing plays like The Custard Kid and all the other plays I've written. Why do people behave the way they do? I'd like to take it a stage further with respect to my drama tutor. I want people to then think, why do I behave the way I do? Self-knowledge. And yeah, that is part of Actually I'm a Murderer, that we look at these characters through their eyes and they see the situation in different ways because of who they are. And which one of the three are you? The ambitious one, the deluded one, or the vicious one? And so it's an interesting question. But that, yes, my drama training, why do people behave the way they do, does inform my book.
You mentioned earlier that there's book 2. Because
Yeah,
I feel like this is almost like a standalone. So I was really interested because I really hope you write more crime books.
thank you. I've been discussing it with the publisher. The book is written and it uses the same 3 characters, which is a bit of a giveaway to the end of 1, isn't it? Does Tony end up being murdered by Mr. Brown? But never mind. And book 2, I came up with the title first before the book. Well, I had an idea for the book. And the publisher said, oh, I'm not very happy with that. Oh, the sales team aren't sure. But when I tell it to audiences of people, and I'm going to test you, you see, when I tell them the title, they think, oh, that's great. It's intriguing, just like Actually I'm a Murderer is a good title. And the title of book 2 is Actually I'm a Corpse.
No, that is a good title.
Thank you. I have to keep telling my editor, and then I'm slowly wearing her down. All right. Yeah. If we come up with a good cover, I'm sure the sales team will go with it. I like it. It's good fun.
So are you doing any crime book events this year? You going to any of the big crime festivals or?
I'm going to Bloody Scotland in, well, I don't know when it is, September, October,
Yeah, that's
September.
September.
Yeah. But you've got to be invited. There is one I've got in my diary, which is down south. But you've got to be invited, So the book has to maybe make an impact on the market first before these crime festivals will say, oh, look, there's this book. Let's get the author. Let's get in touch with his publisher. And I've been promoting it around the country. And on Monday, I was in Stockport. Tuesday, Ripon. Wednesday, York. Thursday, down to London. Friday, went across to Cardiff. Cardiff, back from Cardiff up back to my home in Durham, which is a lot of travelling and a lot of interviews and a lot of talking for somebody as old as me. If I get any older, I'll probably fall apart. So that is the problem. I have to manage, if you like, my energies. So yes, I'd love to do more crime festivals, but can I fit it in a reasonable sort of schedule?
Fair enough. Donna says Bloody Scotland, September 12th to the 14th, and she'll see you there.
I'm on the 13th. The Saturday, is it? No, Friday. Friday the 13th, is it? And that's Donna?
Yeah, she'll see you there, she says.
Donna, see you there. Mine's a pint of orange juice.
There's a lot of people talking about the fact that the 90s is also classed as historical.
I know, you see, I love classic cars. And my classic cars are from the 50s and 60s. And they appear in Actually I'm a Murderer,
I was going to say he's very proud of his classic car. One of the characters.
Yeah, it wasn't a classic car. It wasn't a classic car when he was driving it in 73. But now they reckon 1990s are classic cars. Well, think of the ones You know, I used to drive Mini Coopers, the original Mini Coopers, with the little wheels, you know. And no, I couldn't afford to buy one. You know, I used to just trash them and sell them. Yeah, it's how long ago is the 1990s? 30 years ago now. And just got to accept things move on, things change. In the 1990s, we didn't have iPhones. I couldn't speak to you now like this.
No.
That would have been science fiction. If somebody said you could have a video phone, you know, by 2010, 2015, you say, yeah, a bit like Star Trek. No, it didn't work like that, you know, but it does. Isn't it amazing? I love technology.
It's talking to people about, there's bits in your book about computers, and it's talking to people about technology who remember it, isn't it? Like my dad used to build computer networks,
Right.
and
Well,
he'd done them from when they were like in a room to when they were putting in like fiber optics and things. And it's kind of fascinating hearing him talk about it. And there was like bits in yours in like the 1970s where like this woman's like, got to get into computers. It's like the way
and
of
the
the
mocker. Yeah, they say, what, a computer in my house? But a computer fills a room, you know, fills a big building. No, you'll have one in your house. Nah, never happen. That'll never happen.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's so
I
but
remember the
people
answer.
remember it, don't they? Like getting their first computer, or you know, and now everyone's just got one.
It takes it for granted, yeah. But it is, I mean, I was writing books in 1977, my first one, 48 years ago. And by the 1980s, I was writing onto a computer instead of a typewriter, putting it on a floppy disk. Do you remember floppy disks? And saying to my publisher, here is my book on a floppy disk. And they said, oh, sorry, we haven't got computers. You know, can you send us a typescript and we'll have it typeset by the printer? Until one week they said, oh, thank you. We did get computers into our offices after I had one. And I said, unfortunately, when they installed all the computers in our building, they left the packaging and the boxes saying Apple Mac computer in the backyard. And the local villains saw these, broke into the offices and stole all our computers. So they were back to square one. And it was so inconvenient. They would say, um, this is being typeset. Can you take a word out of this sentence? I said, which word? They said, oh, any word, so it'll fit around the pictures. And of course, nowadays, you do that almost semi-automatically, don't you? Because the computers make it flow. But in those days, you had to do everything manually. So computers love them.
Yeah, it must make writing a lot easier.
It,
So you said you primarily read crime fiction, right?
yeah, hardly read anything else. Yeah.
Who are your go-to kind of crime fiction authors?
Anthony Horowitz, the man is a genius. I hate him. Uh, Mick Herron, the man is a genius. I hate him, but especially because he comes from Newcastle and I come from Sunderland. And in his last Slow Horses book, he created this myth that his civil servants, if they didn't achieve something, they would be sent to civil service purgatory. They'd be transferred to Sunderland. And this was a little dig of his from Newcastle to Sunderland. So in book 2, I'm going to get my own back and get some sharpish comments about Newcastle in maybe. I do, maybe, you know. And for cozy crime, I go to Simon Brett. I like his Charles Paris. I like his Feathering Mysteries. I'm not so keen on Mrs. Pargeter series. Just some ideas work for you and some don't. But certainly Charles Paris is very clever. It's done on audio by Bill Nighy, and he is absolutely perfect. So yeah, But I started, my first ones were from television in the 1950s in black and white, watching Maigret, Simon's Maigret. And then in books, I went to G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown. And so I then went through a phase of science fiction and various other things. But now I've come back to murder mystery. I can't get enough of them.
So what have you read recently and enjoyed?
Oh, the Anthony Horowitz, not the Magpie Murders, the Marble Hall Murders. Yeah, he's so clever. You see, people read books and they think, oh, it's good character, it's good description, it's good plotting. But what Horowitz does is he plays with structure. Like a skeleton in your body is essential to hold it together, but you don't see it. And when you read a murder mystery, you don't always see the structure. But the way he puts story within a story and yet keeps it, makes it make sense, linking the two stories is so clever, you know.
I,
Amazing.
I I feel like there's moments like that in yours, though. I feel like you've set your book up to pay off if you read it very carefully.
Yeah.
Like when you read the ending and then you go back and look at other things, you realise that
Yeah, I
you've
hope
got
so.
to read every page of that book, including the dedications.
Oh, yes, don't give that away.
I'm
Uh,
not. I'm trying not to give anything away, but
yeah.
it is so clever. And you go back and then you're like, oh,
Ah, that's the moment. Yeah, I think I didn't want to write a conventional Agatha Christie, you know, where you present the crime, the suspects, and then the reveal at the end. I wanted to do what Horowitz does, which is explore the structure. So you see the same events through different eyes, but each one gives its own clues. So I hope so. Thank you very much. You've made my day.
and you read you kind of work it out through the eyes of all the people, don't you? So you
Yeah,
don't. You've got the characters are brilliant, including like the side characters who sort of come in and play parts and aren't the sort of main ones telling
yeah,
the story.
yeah.
Um, there's like I like the sort of seedy garage and like things like that where people
Yeah,
even those people or the people in the pub that they go and meet that everyone
oh,
feels very real.
yeah, because they were real. In the beginning, in the opening of the book, there is the usual disclaimer. Um, all characters and events are fictitious, and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is coincidental. It's a lie. Don't report me to the police, for goodness sake. But yes, there are a lot of people I knew in there, and one of them was a real villain. And I told my cousin, who was my contemporary, I said, I put him in there. He said, oh, he's been dead a few years. I said, oh, thank goodness for that. I mean, he won't be able to sue me. Um, and yes, there are other people in there, loosely based on people I knew. So I hope that helps to give them flesh and make them real. But ignore that disclaimer at the beginning. There are people there who won't recognise themselves because they're dead. But if their relatives ever find out, I'm in trouble. So I didn't say that.
How quickly do you write a book? Because you've got two out already this year.
I know. I met MJ Craven, Mike Craven, and he writes one book a year. How can you only write one book a year? You know, I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at my desk. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I help my wife on her farm. So my aim, especially writing adults, was to write 2,500 words a day, every day for 4 days. And if you're good at sums, then that's 10,000 words a week. And then a friend of mine said, look, Susan Calman is making a series of TV programs. And she's going to Newcastle to tell the stories of the witches on the town moor. Can she interview you to tell their story? Because you've done that story in history. And so I thought, if I do Susan Calman's television program, I won't hit my 2,500 words for the day. What I'll do, I'll write 2,500 words in the morning, and then I'll be free to go and talk to her in the afternoon. And unfortunately, I wrote 2,500 words in the morning. Because next day when I sat at my desk, I thought, if I can do 2,500 words in the morning, I can write 5,000 in a day. 4 days, I can write 20,000 words a week, which is what I do now. 5,000 words a day, 4 days a week, 20,000 words. That's why I can write books so quickly when I'm not touring the country selling them. It's great. Actually, I'm a Corpse, book 2. I started it at my usual breakneck speed, and then had to go off and start marketing A History of Britain in 10 Enemies in hardback. And I lost the thread. And when I came back, it was a bit disjointed. I had to go back and rewrite it all. Well, not rewrite it all, but certainly knock things into shape. I'm much better when I'm writing at great pace. It all flows. I haven't forgotten that on page 5 I killed him, so I can't bring him in on page 10. That sort of thing. I love working at 5,000 words a day. It flows. And then writers tell me, oh yes, we write 200 words a day. What? How on earth do you manage to write a book? How can you just write, 1 book a year? I'm a freak.
I think Mike Craven writes a bit ahead, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So I think he brings out a book a year, but I think he's got the books kind of written ahead of time.
That must be so frustrating. I've got a book in my computer. I've got commissions now for till 2027, but I haven't written them except for actually my corpse is written. But I've now got to go back to writing the follow-up to A History of Britain in 10 Enemies. And that will be called Revolting, about revolutions and rebellions, which is written. But my next job is to write A History of the World in 10 Wars. So that will have to be written this year. And maybe somebody will invite me to write a 3rd book in the Actually series. Who knows? Who knows?
I really hope they do. When are we likely to see Actually I'm a Corpse?
Say again?
When are we likely to see the 2nd book?
Oh, sorry, a year's time. First of all, they'll bring out this in paperback, which is a different sort of process, a different market even, I gather. I'm all new to this, and I'm learning all the time. Certainly, A History of Britain in 10 Enemies, which I've probably got a copy of here. Yeah. That is the hardback. And they decided to hit the Christmas market with that, and they launched it on the 10th of October, which is called Super Thursday. And everybody brought out books on that day. And this one was knocked down the top 10 by somebody called Boris Johnson. Have you heard of him? Called Unhinged or something. But it was so tough. And that book went into the Sunday Times bestseller list. It got up to number 4, I think, which was pretty good for a hardback book. Whereas when we came out in paperback, because it had less competition from the Boris Johnsons of this world, that went to #1. And after 7 weeks, it's still #7 yesterday. So it's working with the publishers on their schedules. And actually, I'm a corpse. If they say it'll come out next June, it comes out next June. So I'm a slave to my publishers. At which point, again.
You said actually I'm a Murderer is in the bestseller list as well, right?
It's yesterday, if you read the Times, in the culture section, they do the Waterstones top 10, and actually I'm a Murderer. I bought, this is hard to believe, I got on the train from Cardiff, 5-hour journey, and I got the Times culture supplement out to read on the train. And the first thing I did was turn to the top 10s, and I looked at paperback non-fiction. There I am, #7, still after 7 weeks, great. Then I put the magazine away. And after about 50 miles, I thought, I didn't look at who is keeping me out of the top 10 with hardback fiction. And I looked at the hardback fiction list, and there was actually, I'm a Murderer. I couldn't believe it. I know it's only #10, but it's only just come out, for being out about 3 days. So I had 2 books in the Waterstones top 10 side by side, not even in the same category. And that must be a bit rare. I don't know. J.K. Rowling does it, doesn't she, with Cormoran Strike fiction and the Harry Potter for kids. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's an achievement, isn't it? Donna says, congratulations. She imagines more people talk about you now than that Boris chap.
Oh, thank you. That at least she remembers Boris's name. I sometimes struggle, because he's been replaced by somebody called Farrago. Is it Farrago? Or the guy in America, Trumpet.
I think the interesting thing, before we wind up with a recap of what people are going to buy, that you put in both the fiction and the non-fiction is a sort of look at ordinary people, because you talk about ordinary people more in your non-fiction, and I think that's a really interesting way of looking at history.
Yeah. Whenever I read, even the ones I admire, Horowitz and Simon Brett, they're all middle class. Most of them have been to university. But if I've got 22 dozen characters in Actually I'm a Murderer, maybe 2 of them have been to university. And that's the distinguishing thing. So I hope I write for people who don't feel overwhelmed by you see, when I was a kid, I used to read Enid Blyton, and all the kids went to private schools. I thought, I could never be a writer because I don't know anything about that world. I can enjoy reading Enid Blyton, but I could never write that sort of book. And so if somebody reads my book and think, they're ordinary people, I could give it a go. I hope so.
That's a really, really good aim to sort of have. Finish off our chat tonight by telling people who are watching what they're going to go and purchase. If they haven't already bought your books. What they're going to go away and buy if they haven't already bought your books.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. What are they going to go away and buy? You mean?
Yeah, remind them what they're off to go and buy off their loot.
I understand. They're going to buy a book called Actually I'm a Murderer by this Sunderland-based author called Terry Deary. It's set in Sunderland, 1973, and there are 3 murders. And a lot of people have said that the book is funny as well as exciting and fast-moving. So I would highly recommend it because it says on the back all these nice people who said nice things. So go out and buy it today, you know, because I think you'll enjoy it.
I'd add it's like a really intelligent work of crime fiction as well. You've got to pay attention to every little detail.
Yeah, as you do with all the best crime books. So yeah, that's true.
And then all that's left to say is thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And can I just say to everybody watching that as a writer, I don't matter that much. If it wasn't for the readers who read my books, I might as well not write them. So to all those readers out there, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Lots of people are saying thank you on the stream as well. I've really enjoyed it.